What's up, YouTube? Marvel yesterday released the first longer teaser trailer of Ant-Man, which is supposed to be the last movie in the Avengers Phase 2. Ant-Man is not known much like Spider-Man or Superman, because he's mostly been known as one of the founding members of Avengers in the comic book storylines. But same was the case with Iron Man, who went on to be one of the biggest superheroes in Marvel after the movie's release. So let's see what happens with Ant-Man. But now, if you talk about Ant-Man, there are three major characters who have played Ant-Man in comics. One is Hank Pym, next is Scott Lang, and then there is Eric O'Grady. The movie is based on the Scott Lang Ant-Man arc, with Hank Pym playing his mentor. In the movie, Michael Douglas plays Hank Pym, Paul Rudd is Scott Lang, Evangeline Lilly of Hobbit fame is Hope Van Dyne, who's daughter of Hank Pym, and Corey Stoll, who I know from playing Peter Russo in the House of Cards series. He plays Darren Cross, or Yellow Jacket, who is the main baddie out to make world safe on his own terms. Now let's get on with the trailer and see what it has in store for us. Here we see Scott Lang being apprehended by cops in middle of a possible robbery. Who is he robbing from is not known, but I have some thoughts which I would share later. I read that in the movie, Scott is a burglar, unlike the comic where he works in Stark Industries and has to resort to burglary in order to save his daughter. Unfortunately here, he is seen getting caught in the act and thus eventually moved to prison. Next, we see Hank Pym talking to Scott, possibly in the prison. Now here's my theory. Scott might be trying to take something that belongs to Hank and thus was arrested by cops. This could be the scene where Hank comes in to bail him out. In return, he needs Scott to take up the mantle of Ant-Man. This is totally different from the comics. In comics, Scott steals Hank's suit in order to save his daughter. Later on, when confronted by Hank, he tells him why he did what he did. It is then that Hank asks Scott to keep the suit as long as he uses it for good stuff. In the comics, Hank is not as old as he's shown here in the movie. But I've also read that Hank does have his own adventures with Agent Carter and Howard Starr in the movie. That could possibly be in flashback scenes or probably very early in the movie. But then again, it's not known whether these adventures that Hank Pym has is as Hank Pym, a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, or the Ant-Man. This is Scott's daughter I talked about earlier. If Marvel is true to the source material, in future she ends up being a young Avenger called Stature with same powers as Ant-Man. This is Darren Cross, the main baddie. Now this is a character with which Marvel has completely ignored the source material. In comics, Darren is owner of Cross Technologies, which stands toe-to-toe with Stark as well as Hammer Industries. He's also a brilliant scientist who is suffering from a fatal disease. In order to save himself, he develops a pacemaker which malfunctions and ends up giving him superhuman powers. But in the movie, he is shown to be a mentee to Hank Pym, who I believe inherits Pym's company and uses it for his own experiments. He is said to be trying to make the world a better place in his own twisted way. He also ends up becoming Yellow Jacket, who in actual comics is an alias Hank Pym runs by once Scott becomes Ant-Man. This is Hope Van Dyne, daughter of Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne. She goes on to become an Avenger villain called Red Queen. What kind of fool she has in this movie is not known, but since she took up her mother's last name instead of father's, I believe she is one with daddy issues. Here we see Ant-Man's suit in action. Developed by Hank Pym using his Pym particles, it gives Ant-Man size-shifting abilities. He can go really microscopic to as tall as 100 feet, but which of these powers are actually shown in the movie is not known. I believe it should mainly deal with his microscopic size-shifting abilities. While in a shrunken state, he maintains his normal human strength, so his punch would still pack a punch of a full-grown man. Additionally, his helmet gives him a power to communicate with ants and actually call upon his whole ant army to take down the bad guys. That is it from the first impressions of Ant-Man trailer from my side. I believe it was slightly underwhelming as I expected some more interesting revelations, but then again it's just the first teaser and I'm sure there would be a lot more coming. What do you think about Ant-Man? Do you think this movie would be Marvel's first flop, or they're off to make a new Iron Man out of Ant-Man? Do drop a comment below. Also make sure to follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Hope you enjoyed my trailer breakdown. This is Geekstradamus signing off.